Like a quick question while we're all here. Is there also going to be a planned workshop for planning for Open Day today?
Yeah, we're actually talking about that right now. We will put out some resources. We just have to actually communicate exactly what those will be.
And if you have needs that you can think of for what you could use for Open Day today, let us know and we can definitely think through that or incorporate that into some of our planning.
Awesome. So I will go ahead and get us started today. I am recording this as well, just so everybody's aware, so we can post this for other people that are interested in this topic. So thank you so much, first of all, for everybody spending your evening with us and joining us on this workshop. This was actually a suggestion from Laura Beidigger, who I haven't seen come on yet, but she was asking, what are other brigades doing in terms of planning their strategic plans for 2019 or their strategic priorities. And so we put together this workshop based off of that impetus so that folks can learn a little bit more about what some brigades are doing, like Code for Buffalo and Hack for LA. And then S.T. Meyer, who's our Chief Program Officer at Code for America, and Meredith Rowski, who is the Director of the network. They will be talking about the strategic priorities at Code for America and the Brigade program. So it should be a pretty packed workshop with lots of information. And we hope that you are able to kind of get out of this workshop what it is you came in hoping to either get answered or get clarity on, or we're just interested to learn or hear about. So the first thing I'd like to do, let me add a couple more people into the room. What I'd like to do first is in the chat, I'm going to share essentially the agenda for this workshop. And while this is the agenda, the important piece while we're on is that there's a section at the bottom for you to be able to put in questions that you have for ST or Meredith while they're presenting, just given I assume there might be quite a few. And so instead of having to work with the Zoom system to raise hands and stuff like that, if you can just pop your questions into the doc, then we can get those answered shortly after their presentations. So does anybody have any questions before we get started? No? Is everyone able to edit the doc or write into it? Yeah, looks like it. Okay. Perfect. So without further ado, I will pass this over to ST to kick us off. Or actually, according to my agenda, we're doing introductions, and that's how we usually like to start the workshops, just so everybody gets a sense of who's on, where everyone's calling from. So let's try to do this pretty quickly, just since we have quite a number of people on the call. What I'll do is I will just go round robin and call on people. So if everyone can give their name, their brigade, and what their favorite superpower would be if they had one. And we'll start with you, Mike.
Oh, you put me on the spot for thinking of my favorite superpower. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Brown from Code for Buffalo. We are a new brigade. I'm just about 7 months old. I'd say my favorite superpower would be able to control time. It would be pretty convenient for me procrastinating.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. I'll go next because I'm next on my screen. So my name is Veronica. And if I had a favorite superpower, I would want to be invisible so I could see all the things. Harsh, you're next.
Oh, thanks for putting me on the spot also. So yeah, I'm very new, absolutely new. So I haven't joined anything as yet, I got this email today and I said, wow, this looks very interesting. So I just joined, and so I don't have any superpowers right now since I just joined. but I have a few. I wear multiple hats, so yeah, changing my hats is probably a power. I have a title of an Intel innovator. I'm vice president of a software company. I'm chairman for ACM Sacramento chapter. So I'm just trying to see how we could do this tie-up of ACM code for America and code for Sacramento here and stuff. And I also do a little bit of startup stuff and things like that. So that's a little bit about myself. So not too many superpowers yet.
No worries. That's great. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right. Sabra, you're up next.
Hi, I am Sabra from Code for Asheville, and the superpower I wish I had was the time stop. I think the one I actually have is annoying city staff over tiny little details that nobody but me notices.
Thank you. Ryan, you're up next.
Yeah, my name's Ryan Cook. I am here in the great city of Chicago with the Open Uptown Brigade. And the superpower I would like to have would be teleportation. Because I feel like I always want to be in a bunch of different places and it's super inconvenient to travel between them. Who needs public transit if you can teleport, right? Yep.
The government sanctioned teletransportation. Cool, thanks, Ryan. Meredith, you're up next.
My turn. Hey, everybody. I'm Meredith. I'm the relatively new director of the network, started a couple months ago. Thrilled to be here and really excited about the great crowd we've got this evening for the workshop. If I had a superpower, it would definitely be apparition, Harry Potter style, being able to like disappear and appear in another place immediately. I'm currently listening to binge mode Harry Potter, which I'd highly recommend, and it's got me re-obsessed with all things Harry Potter.
Awesome, thank you. Hashim, you're up next.
Hey everyone, my name's Hashim, part of the network team here, and I think my superpower would be to be able to travel at the speed of the Flash. I'd love to be able to get a lot of things done, even more quickly, and the Flash is the man.
Cool, thanks. Tom, you're up next.
Hey everyone, I'm Tom. I'm the developer evangelist on the network team, and I think my superpower, I'm going to copy the character from Deadpool 2, Domino, whose character is just excessively good luck. And I think it would be just really fun to just like walk across a street full of cars going back and forth and not get run over. But
that would be helpful. Thanks. Zach, you're up next. We can't hear you yet.
Okay, how about now? Okay, Zachary Antoyan, code for Fresno. We're going to actually be figuring out the name tonight in our second planning meeting after this. And my superpower would be to talk to animals. They've probably got some pretty interesting things to say.
That's a new one. I like that one. Nina, you're up next.
Hi, my name is Nina. I'm with Hack for LA. I'm one of the two co-captains. And the superpower I wish I had would be super good communication. Because I feel like that would benefit my life a lot, to be able to communicate clearly all the time with everyone. And I feel like I'm trying to work towards that in real life. So maybe one day.
Awesome, thank you. Amanda, I have you up next.
That's perfect because Nina stole my superpower. So, so I'm Amanda. I'm a former CFA fellow, and I live in a city that doesn't have a brigade. So sometimes I hang out with Open Oakland folks, and sometimes I tell Open Oakland folks that live in my city we should start one for us. And if I had a superpower that wasn't Nina's superpower, it would be being able to look at someone and seeing their whole network of friends and colleagues and being able to connect people. Because that's one of my great joys in life, is saying, oh gosh, you know this person. Like if I see it on Facebook or Instagram or something, like someone's connections, and then knowing that someone that I think is cool knows someone else that I think is cool, or introducing people that don't know each other yet.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks.
ST. You're up next.
Hi everyone, ST Mayer, Chief Program Officer for the for Code for America, and I'll be speaking shortly. I guess I would fly. Why not? Seems kind of cool. Could do all sorts of things with it.
Awesome. Thanks. Nick, I have you up next. We can't hear you.
I have two mutes, sorry.
No worries.
Nick Florsch, Code for BTV, which is Burlington, Vermont. It's very cold here, so a superpower would be staying warm in the coldest temperature. But really, I would like Batman's superpower, which is to be incredibly wealthy, so I could be the philanthropist I've always wanted to be.
Awesome. Thanks. Andrew is from Open Oakland, and like Hashim, I also like the Flash. In particular, I wish I had the ability to read at Flash-like speeds and remember everything I read. That would be really helpful. Thank you. Ryan, you're up next.
Is that me?
Yes, that's you.
Okay, I'm Ryan. I'm Code for New Orleans. I always have a hard time choosing a superpower. I'm always torn between like three of them. One is fast travel or teleportation. The other one is the ability to stop time for others, but only if I don't age in the process. And then the third is the ability to heal by will.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Kevin, you're up next.
Hey, Kevin Curry in Virginia Beach, Code for Hampton Roads. If I could do anything, it would definitely pull some kind of Doctor Strange thing and have my core team members be able to be duplicated here when they get awesome jobs in other cities, or clone them in some way. That would be really fantastic. Daughter just went off to college a year ago, and so I found all of her old Harry Potter books. So I'm on page 63, Meredith.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. Janet, you're up next. And I budgeted about 2 more minutes for these intros, so don't mean to cut people off, but if we can be speedy, that would be great.
I'm Janet Michaelis from Code for Dayton, and reflecting back on what I did this weekend, I would like to be able to cure people's broken brains, whether that was physical or mental illness, just by willing it, as someone else said.
Great, thank you. Tim, you're up next.
Tim Eccleston, Code for Nashville. I would be able to project things that I see into other people's minds. I mean, like, consensually, but I feel like I'm always visualizing things and having trouble describing them.
Nice. Thank you. Aparna, we have you up next. Oh, Pam. And switch names. Okay, let's see. Pam, you're then up next. It's still mute. Oh, there you go.
There, sorry. Hey, this is Pamela in Greenville, South Carolina, Code for Greenville. And I think for superpowers, I have to go with Wonder Woman's powers. And then help with the justice fighting.
Awesome. Cool. Jonathan Payne, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Payne. I'm working to start a brigade in Connecticut. And I just finished a boot camp last month. So something I wished for many times was the instant learning ability, like from the Matrix.
Cool. Thank you. Scott Williams.
Hi all, Scott Williams. I'm currently brigadeless. I just moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, so I guess the closest would be Dayton, but looking for birds of a feather in this area as well. Superpower would probably be either cloning, like Dr. Manhattan, or time stop.
Cool. Thank you. Next up, I'm going to call out 3 people just so you're ready. So Aaron Deacon, Allison Lawyer, and Janie Lung.
Hey, Aaron Deacon, Code for KC in Kansas City Digital Drive. I'll go with Flight with ST.
Awesome. Thank you. Allison, you're up next.
Cool. I'm Allison with Open Oakland, and I would also have teleportation powers. I could visit everyone.
Great, thank you. Janny.
Hi, everyone. I'm from Open Seattle, and I also want to have Matrix-style abilities to download information into my brain.
Perfect. Thank you. Simone.
Hi there. Sorry it took forever. My name's Simone. We're with Code for Durham in North Carolina, and my superpower would be probably seeing other people's needs. When you look at them, you can see what they really need.
That's a great one. Thank you. Let's see. Will Scora.
Hi, I'm Will. Hi, I'm Will from Cleveland, Open Cleveland, and I'll go with omnilingualism.
Perfect. Thank you. John Stevens. Okay, if you have one, just type it in. And then I got some of these mixed around now, but Ian, have you gone yet?
I'm still here. So Ian Henshaw, Code for Carry, and my superpower would be to make anybody agree with me. But then again, second thought, that's probably as bad as the Midas touch. So.
Cool, thank you. Okay, that is everybody. So thank you everyone for being quick on the spot. And ST, I will pass this over to you.
Wonderful. Hello, everybody. All right, let me do my screen share and see if this will work. Great. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Wonderful. Let me just put it in presentation mode. Okay, I think even better. So I can't see all of you now. So if you, I think best way is hold your questions until the end. Otherwise, we won't get to the other super exciting presenters who I'm really excited to hear from. But put your questions into the doc, and then Veronica will help us stay on time and organized by monitoring those at the end. And if you have any problems, just drop that into the chat so that we know that sound or otherwise has gone awry. Otherwise, I'll just try to get through. So as I mentioned, I'm the Chief Program Officer at Code for America. And part of my job is to help us put together our sort of long-term set of strategies that lead to the kind of impact that we want. Obviously not alone, with much help and under constant revision. But we've grown as an organization over the past few years, and one of the things that we found would be really helpful as we closed out 2018 and moved into 2019 was to really put together all of the strategies that we're engaged in and some key objectives around each of our programmatic buckets into one single deck, and then use that to kind of communicate out to the community, the board, funders, staff. We're big enough where not everybody knows what everybody's doing. So to think kind of across program, across silos, so that we can kind of always understand what was the top priorities for the organization as we go into this year. We try to remain a nimble organization that iterates. So these aren't like locked in stone. It's not like if we don't discover that something's not working, we won't change it. Or if other, more compelling strategies sort of emerge themselves that are really contemporary in a moment of the time, that we wouldn't take those up. But by documenting what it is that we're doing, we're able to have a clearer picture on whether it feels like the right body of work. So I'm going to go through those strategies for all of you so you have a sense. And what you're going to notice is that the network strategies are built into the different, they're built into the presentation kind of across each of the buckets. And that's intentional because we try to sort of think about how we categorize and organize the work outside of our own internal organizational silos, but in a way that makes sense to the broader world. So I'm going to ask you to kind of look for the work that you touch or the ways you touch the organization in the presentation as I kind of go through it. And then Meredith's going to kind of make that even more concrete at the end in terms of what that means for her team, the team that you probably work with the most in terms of Q1 of this year. I also just want to kind of highlight there's a big appendix, and we'll share this out with you at the end. There's a big appendix, and those are all the things that we're also doing that are about fundraising, operations, people management, human resources, but we didn't have time to go through all of that. So I put that all at the end so you could see that indeed we do try to create an organization that's a fun and inclusive and mission-driven place to work, but I'm not going to go through all the work that ladders into that. So hopefully this looks pretty familiar to you, but this is the mission of our organization. This is what we do, and this is what everything that we are focused on is related to. It's about making sure that government can work for the people, by the people in the digital age. It's about using the principles and practices of the digital age to improve how government serves the American people and how the American public improves government. This is our double strategy, inside, outside. So the first, and so we organize all of our work into 3 buckets. And this helps us explain how everything we do kind of organizes and ladders itself up, right? So one is showing what's possible. The other is helping people do it themselves. And the third is building a movement. And so as I go through each of the goals that we have for 2019, you're going to see that they're organized by one of these 3 buckets. So in the bucket, show what's possible. This is about demonstrating that government services can be so good that government wants to build more and more services that are like that. It's kind of creating what I often call irrevocable proof points. We don't have to change every service at once, but we do have to change a few of them so we can point to them and say, look what's possible. It can be better, right? And hopefully this resonates because it's a lot of what all of you are doing every single day in your communities as well. So the first is to finish, scale, and get Calfresh across California. This is a service that we deliver in California that is enrolling people in SNAP, otherwise called Calfresh in California. It's a project that we started about 6 years ago. We've been heavily enrolling people for the past 3 years. We're the largest outreach and enrollment assister in the entire state. And we basically think we'll pretty much be the primary or almost a single enroller in Calfresh in California this year. And so when we say finish scaling, it's about making sure we're serving every single community. No county is left out of that. And it's making sure that we're touching everybody that we can possibly touch with that. Proving that safety net services can be effectively integrated is about our integrated benefits initiative. This is about taking the work we've done around SNAP enrollment, marrying that with the other safety net services that most people who are eligible for one are also eligible for, namely Medicaid, TANF, a variety of other programs that you may know by local names, and creating some proof points around this. This is much newer work. We've only been doing it for just about a year, and we really want to take that to the next level where we have the data and the proof that demonstrates that when you integrate, you can get more people in the kind of help that they need, and you can do it in a way that has dignity and a variety of other benefits. We're also looking for a model to grow our safety network that shows these better outcomes. And this is about the fact that we sometimes start with a government partner. Other times we move to doing the work without a government partner, and then sort of seeing the government as a recipient of some of the work, et cetera. And we're testing a few different strategies here to sort of figure out which one is scalable. So not just the outcomes that we're looking for, but also the model of engagement. Change the record clearance landscape so every eligible conviction can be cleared quickly and automatically. We're engaged in a pretty widespread effort around automatic record clearance. And we actually think we have the potential to not just show what's possible in a few places, but actually sort of change the conversation at a policy level so that every single record clearance law that goes into effect into the future is about making that automatic instead of putting the onus on the individuals who otherwise would need to petition for that kind of clearance. Identify new ways to reduce mass incarceration is about doing some new discovery work. We don't have a product yet in this space, but actually starting that discovery work to figure out if there is a product, if there is a set of tools that we might develop that would help reduce mass incarceration. Very, very early stage, hasn't even been started. It's about setting the intention to start that. And so if we take each of those in the show what's possible bucket, each of those goals, you can see that we've actually drilled down to a much more detailed level where we're actually assigning numbers and metrics to some of those things. So I'm not going to go through all of these. Again, we'll share it out with you at the end, but I can just give you a sense of what some of those might look like. So let's see. Sorry, I keep moving the screen around here so that I can see it as I'm talking to you. So one of those I'll just take we'll clear 250,000 convictions with Clear My Record. So that's a goal for the number of convictions we'll be clearing here in California. Obviously, there's a lot of other work associated with that program, but it gives you a sense of the kind of scale that we're aiming for when we talk about one particular strategy. All right, the second bucket that we organize our work into, help others do it themselves. This is about principles and practices that we think helps create that change that's more scaled and that really sticks. This is about recognizing that a lot of what we do is about culture change in government. That while we can build technology and deliver a service, there's actually people who are responsible for these programs, many of them doing a really amazing job of delivering those services, and they're eager for new tools and new ways of doing that. And we want to make sure that we're supporting them in all the ways that we possibly can so that they can continue to catalyze this change with whatever's available to them in whatever community that they're working in, excuse me. Drive adoption of the principles and practices of delivery-driven government through writing, consulting, training, and advocacy. Establish a program model that builds the capacity of local and state leaders. This is about taking all that work that we've already done in this area, but trying to figure out what is the model behind it so that we can think about scaling in future years. Sorry, I feel like I'm skipping over slides as I'm trying to navigate this here. And so then again, we take all of the work that we're doing in that particular bucket and we try to get more refined about it. So a couple of those that might be both of interest to you, but also help you to kind of see the scale that we're talking about. Through 8 community fellowships, we will increase local government's capacity to meet the needs of vulnerable people. You know that we did 4 fellowships last year, and so when we look toward next year, we start to talk about 8 community fellowships, which is a much bigger number there, obviously. I mentioned that we have a goal of doing more writing and publishing. So we will publish 4 case studies and 3 guides illustrating delivery-driven government in action. And we don't want to just publish those. We actually want people to read them. And we want them to be available to people in a variety of sectors. So along with that, we want to earn 150 media mentions, which serves as lead generation and brand building to establish an engagement baseline so that we can start to reach out to new people, bring them into the fold, and help them adopt the work that we're doing. All right, our last bucket, probably the most familiar to you, build a movement, a learning community that makes change stick. Elevate awareness nationally with a cohesive brand narrative and calls to action. For us, this is really about continuing to build the brand of Code for America. We know it's beneficial to all of our brigades when they go to their government partners and they say, hey, I'm a part of Code for America. If their government partners already know what that is, it makes the conversation go much smoother. But the exact same thing exists on our programmatic side. When we expand Get Calfresh out and we go to a county, if they know who we are, they know what our values are, they know how we do our work, they're much more willing to take our call, to talk to us, and then ideally work with us. And so it's really about building our brand in service to the kind of work that we want to do and the kind of calls to action that we want to push out. It's not about brand building just in the own, just for brand building's sake, but it's toward this particular end. Make Summit an industry-defining event. I think many of us might feel that we're already an industry-defining event, but the industry is always changing, and we want to make sure that Summit maintains its relevance and continues to grow and reach the right kinds of people. That it's not just a place where people who are already a part of the community can come together and meet each other and see each other and enjoy that camaraderie, but where we're always bringing new people in as well, particularly new government partners who we feel like have a huge opportunity to learn from Summit and where the dialogue with them can really enrich the conversation for everybody. Grow and support our brigades to make a bigger impact at the local level. A number of our staff, who you hopefully know well, have jobs that are all about supporting you in the work that you do and our other brigades and the work that they are doing. And we want to make sure that we are always thinking about how we can do that better and how we can help you to make a greater and greater impact because you are the boots on the ground. You are the ones working at the local level in more communities than we can ever hope to serve through our other programmatic work. Strengthen the networks around our program work. This is recognizing that we have many, many adjacent organizations that we work with in any kind of service that we deliver, and we want to make sure that we are caring and feeding for those networks and always strengthening how we work with them. A good example is when we work with Get Calfresh in California, we work really closely with the food banks who provide a lot of in-person assistance to people trying to receive SNAP and have a lot of mission alignment with that work. And so we don't want to be just working in our own silo, but we want to be working in strong collaboration with them. What we found is there's also often an opportunity to bring those people together and learn from each other. And so we want to always make sure that we are caring and feeding for that. And so when we look into this particular bucket, we also, again, we get down to a lot more brass tacks and some more details here. So let's see, I'll pull out a couple that maybe are of interest to you. So here's one. We will grow our brigade network to cover 60% of the US by making it easier for the willing to engage, regardless of geography or technical skills. So I think we've all heard in many conversations with brigades over the years, but in particular through engagement with you at Brigade Congress, at Summit last year, that rural brigades in particular have some challenges organizing because of the meetup structure. And so we're testing some things and we want to be able to overcome that. And that many people who don't have technical skills come to brigades. And for some, they've figured out ways of engaging and working across those silos and making sure that there is a place for and that they benefit from the skills people have where they're not technical skills. And there are other brigades that are still trying to figure that out and want to learn from those brigades that have overcome those obstacles. And so when we think about getting to 60% coverage of the US, we think about places where maybe we haven't had as much success engaging or we know we have some challenges and making sure we overcome those. Let's see, another one that might be of interest is we will strengthen brigade practices and their relationship with local governments. This is, again, one that we've heard really consistently, that for many brigades, they want to engage more with their local government and they want to learn from brigades that already have a really strong relationship there. This is something that particularly new brigades reach out to us for a lot of guidance. You know, hey, I'm starting up a brigade. I want to work with my government. Do you have a deck that I can share with them? Who do I tell them I'm working with? Does anyone know how to get a successful meeting? Who should I ask for a meeting with? And so thinking about how our infrastructure can help support that and grow that where there's a particular need. All right, and then as I just mentioned at the end, I'm just going to show you the buckets here and then let you go through those. But you know, we're an organization of about a $17.5 million budget for 2019, and we have about 65 staff. We have, at last count, we had 78 brigades, brigade chapters. I think that's changing a little bit with the current MOU signing, but we sit about roughly that number, and about 25,000 people who sit in those. So we're a pretty big operation at this point. And so as much as we maybe don't want to sort of, you know, care and feed for like the HR functions and the fundraising, and, you know, we just moved offices and things like that, you know, may not be the most exciting part of the work. We actually have a number of our staff who do maintain those operations, and they're fantastic at it. It takes a fair amount of our executive team's time, and it's something we just always want to be aware of. And so we've also included in here a bucket that's called Sustain the Work, and this is about the financial foundation that allows us to pursue a bold vision. And this is about making sure we always have the resources to do the work that we all want to do, which is something that's constant work, being a nonprofit. And then support our people and the people we serve is the last bucket. And this is about the culture we need to tackle generational work. And for this is about being the kind of organization that we want to be and making sure that we have the kind of employees who are going to be really excited to get up and contribute to this mission every day and feel good about the contributions that they make to what is really a multi-generational set of activities. So I'm just going to go back to the very top of the deck and pause. Veronica, I don't know if we should go right into Meredith's Q1 OKRs or if we should pause and take some questions. I know I went quickly, but was trying to stay within my time allocation there.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you. I guess we can do just a couple questions right now while it's kind of fresh, and then switch over to Meredith. And then if we have time after that, we can revisit some of the questions we didn't get to.
Great. All right. I'm just going to put us back on video now too, so we can all see each other.
Awesome. So a question here about mass incarceration work. So what options do you see for brigades working with their state governments, and which areas do you think are more likely for progress when it comes to mass incarceration?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the first is like, what are the areas for opportunity, right? And then that it's about like, what is the most effective way for achieving that change, which of course the brigades are a huge asset in sort of thinking about what are all the ways that we can get there. And that helps answer the question about sort of how could brigades plug in. The very frank answer is, I don't know what's the best opportunity, which is why we're doing discovery. We actually try to kind of hold out on our own assumptions about like, we should do this thing when we start discovery work. And instead we use a very structured process to like quickly iterate on things and identify where we might see some traction and some solutions. So we call it solution jumping. And it's something we try not to do, and it's something we actually encourage our government partners to do, not to do, right? Which probably is familiar to you guys, which is, I want to solve mass incarceration. Okay, great, I know what I should do. No, let's actually go through the iterative process of developing something, testing it with users, going back and developing, continuing to test that with users, and sort of figuring out how we can do that iteration in a kind of a quick way. And so we haven't done that yet, which is why I don't know what the solutions are. We've got to start with the users, but certainly we look to all of you as to be kind of key, to have key input on that. We always look to stakeholders to help us understand, where is a place to start? Where is there some innovation that's nascent? Where is that political environment ripe for change? And how can we kind of engage with that? There's one, there's one set of starting points that we are looking at here because we have some experience that I'll just kind of daylight, and then, I just encourage you to let us know if you have experience in that area or if it feels like a local concern. So one is with courts. And the reason we sort of have some inkling there is because it seems like many, the courts just decide a lot of things. So let's just say that up front. And it seems like that it is a lot of our users basically in other areas tell us that they are bottlenecked by the courts, or the courts make decisions, or they don't have access to information by the courts that is adversely impacting their lives and resulting in incarceration. And we know that because we've worked in the probationary space a long time with people who interact with the courts a lot, and in the record clearance space. So we just have this sense like maybe we should try something to learn a little bit more about the courts. That's one area. And then frankly, the other one for us is there's a lot of energy right now around bail reform. And so perhaps there's something there, and we kind of have our ear to the ground around that as well. But that's where we're at in that work.
Awesome, thank you. One other question was, how do you define the industry, quote unquote, for Summit? And that might be helpful to dig into a little.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we typically think about it as kind of the civic tech ecosystem, if you will, and maybe industry feels a little bit too limiting. But we think of the civic tech ecosystem, and then we think of different sectors as having a role in that, or different audiences, if you will. And so government is an audience. And so if we think of sort of like the government tech audience, we want to be the place where people come instead of maybe, I don't know, name your favorite government tech conference that, maybe you've been to, or your colleagues have been to, and kind of come back and gone like, what is that? We'd rather they came to Summit, or they at least come to Summit. The other is for sort of what we would call sort of the new vendor ecosystem. And those are, vendors who are trying to deliver government services in an agile and iterative way, who are thinking about being user-centered in design. And so maybe disrupting some of the sort of more traditional vendor landscape, if you will. And then lastly, we actually want to also think about it as those people who are working on civic issues without a tech lens. So it's probably a lot of the people that you work with who are policymakers, maybe inside or outside government, frankly. People who are the recipients, beneficiaries, or otherwise need to engage in government service delivery. Some of that relationship's clear, but sometimes it's not a willing relationship, such as an incarceration situation, right? And so those people who have a premier view on the services government delivers, but maybe don't necessarily have a seat at that kind of formal table, like in a vendor way or in a government way. That's sort of how we think about the audiences. So, I guess best way to think about industry is the civic tech ecosystem and all the people who fit into that.
Awesome. Thanks so much. For the interest of time, I'm going to turn over to Meredith now, and then we can do more questions after Meredith's presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Veronica. And just want to give a big thanks to ST for taking the time to outline what the organization is up to in 2019 and very eloquently teeing up our priorities and how the work of the network fits in. So I'm going to try and share my screen seamlessly if possible. You all see this?
Yeah, it's loading right now. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, again, thank you all for joining tonight. Thanks to ST. I'm the director of the network, been on for a couple months and just absolutely been floored and energized by the talent that I'm seeing in the network, and have had the privilege to join some hack nights and some meetups in person, and looking forward to getting to know all of you in person if I haven't already. So this might be bringing up for some of you, what does this mean for my brigade? What can I expect from the network team? What should I be looking out for in terms of resources and support that the team can provide? So wanted to provide a little bit more detail on what our team is going to be up to in the first quarter in the interest of delivering on some of these goals that ST outlined for the network. And when I say the network team, that's myself and Veronica and Hashim and Tom and Christopher. So all the folks who you hopefully work with on a daily basis and are working every day to support the work of the network. So I've got 4 kind of overarching objectives that I'm going to dig into and just pull out some of the key results that we measure ourselves against and track our progress against. So for Q1, so that's basically now until the end of March, we want to work to establish a program model that builds the capacity of local leaders. So that supports all of you, that helps you level up your skills, your training, helps you deliver on the objectives that you've set with your group. So a few ways in which we've challenged ourselves to do that in the first quarter are to launch the 2019 Community Fellowship, launch that application process, make sure we have clear goals that we can measure over the course of the fellowship, and share out some of those learnings for all of you and the rest of the community. Another one that I'll lift up is establish an advisory committee for Brigade Day at Summit. So if any of you are interested in that, stay tuned, because we definitely need help creating an agenda that resonates with all of you and that's useful for the skills you'd like to develop. Also develop training materials in 3 key areas that are identified by all of you. Last fall, we did a workshop where we discussed some of the resources that you all could use. We want to make sure to be able to deliver on some of those in Q1. We're also going to work to pilot a program to help brigade leaders understand retention of their brigades. Who's showing up regularly, who's not, and then we can work together to explore some solutions on, or some answers on why that might be, and solutions to help keep your brigades strong and active and implementing at the level that you'd like. I should say that all of these, or many of these things, are informed by things that we've heard from you, whether it was things we heard from you at Brigade Congress, or surveys, or things that your National Advisory Council, the NAC, has lifted up, or things we hear regularly over email and discourse. So know that we take all of that very seriously and use that to craft our priorities as we're determining what we spend our time and energy on. So another big objective for us in Q1 is going to be to prioritize diversity and inclusion in our network representation. So a couple ways that manifests. We want to help lead and shepherd the 2019 NAC elections. That's the National Advisory Council election process, to achieve a diverse pool of candidates and new leaders stepping up for the first time. So I'll mention that just got underway today. So if you're interested in representing the network, helping inform CFA on priorities and being a champion for the network, we'd highly, highly encourage you to run. So look out for more on that, either in your inbox or in Slack. We also are going to be implementing a brigade census. We've talked a little bit about this throughout the MOU process, but important that we get a sense of who is in our network. You all have identified that increasing diversity and accessibility of this work is a priority and something that you'd like to see us focus on. And we take that very seriously and are going to work to establish a baseline via that census. So definitely going to need your help in that area as well. We also would like to launch at least one growth strategy with an intentional effort to increase brigade diversity, focusing on underrepresented groups in tech. All right. So I know I'm moving kind of fast. Hopefully there'll be a couple minutes for questions, but want to make sure we get to the other presenters as well. So a big third objective for us is going to be to develop infrastructure for scale and increased impact at the local level. So in this first quarter, what that means for us is going to be to pilot some redeployable projects for new brigades that are onboarded. And what we mean by that is a project that you can basically take out of the box and start to implement for new brigades. We've heard from several folks that it'd be useful to have some things that people can use to get started, to help them build relationships, to help them build community. And we want to be useful in providing resources and identifying projects that can be redeployed and helping folks do that. We also want to pilot what we're calling rinse and repeat actions for new brigade members. So in the vein of wanting to keep this work as accessible as possible for people of all skill sets, we want to make sure we have things on hand that people can pick up and do that has real impact, but that doesn't require a huge amount of technical skills or capacity. So the kind of crude analogy that we've been using, it's not a perfect one, but like what is the network's equivalent of a phone bank? When someone shows up to a campaign office, they want to help out a candidate that they support, they can pick up the phone and read a script and get to work. And we sort of understand how if a lot of people do that, it leads to an outcome that we all can get behind. So what is that kind of rinse and repeat action for us that we can have available for new brigade members and have them be engaged in the work in meaningful ways? Also want to create some materials that are going to be useful to all of you. So one-pagers that you can repurpose, more information about our fellowship that you can share, excuse me, a Brigade 101 deck that you could share with partners or potential government supporters. So a variety of things that we want to create to be useful to you. I think I've got one more. Uh-oh. Okay. I'll go quickly through these, but we strive to be an excellent resource and provide excellent support to all of you on a daily basis. So a few ways in which we seek to do that. Keep you posted on what's happening in the network via This Week in Civic Tech. Ensure that we're facilitating a safe and respectful community via our code of conduct and responding to those inquiries in a timely fashion so people are respected and knowing that their concerns are taken seriously. Providing in-kind software donations to brigades as well. I'm losing my voice, so it's probably a good place to stop, but hopefully that gives you a sense of some of what our team is up to regularly and how we plan to help deliver for the things you want to do in the coming weeks and months.
All right. Thank you so much, Meredith. That was wonderful. We have a few more questions here. Let's see, and comments. That's great. So I will go ahead and go with a couple more questions, and I'll leave this up to you, UST and Meredith, as to who responds, or I might just ask one of you. So a question came up, Meredith, about what's happening with disaster response. It wasn't mentioned so far, and so can we get a little bit more information? And this person is worried that it will lose steam if we don't keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Excuse me. So this is one of the areas that we think could potentially make a great redeployable project for the network to invest resources in what this looks like and how other brigades could pick it up and deploy some of that. Excuse me, sorry guys, I got a tickle in my throat at the worst time. We're also continuing to explore partnership opportunities with both the Red Cross and FEMA. So that's, I think, another way in which we can keep this work moving. As you all may know, with larger organizations and institutions, the partnership process can be pretty involved. So we're trying to be good partners in that process and see what we can do to partner more formally. But in the meantime, we'd love to work with those of you who have worked on this project to see if it's something that we can get others involved in and ready to deploy if and when the next disaster hits.
Great, thank you. Let's see, ST, how does CFA determine who they partner with on integrated benefits in other parts of the country? I.e., how can I convince my city, county, state to get on board?
Yes. Integrated. So for integrated benefits, let's see, we had a very extensive decision-making matrix. And basically the first cut of that was a recommendation from the federal government to agencies, those that oversee sort of more traditional human services called the FNS agency, and then the CMS, which oversees the Medicaid program. Those agencies gave us a list of states that they felt like either had a very big tech crisis recently, and frankly had spent a lot of money on some kind of a tech solution that had not gone well, and therefore were sort of open to trying to do new things at the highest levels of leadership, or a state that had already submitted a application to use federal funds for something that was around integration, where they had concerns that perhaps they didn't have perhaps they didn't have everybody they needed to sort of on staff to help them be successful in that, or sort of maybe their proposal outstripped their capacity, let's say. They identified that short list of states, and then we basically matched that against data that demonstrated need. So frankly, were there a lot of people eligible for these programs and unenrolled, because we wanted to make sure that it was a place where we could have a big impact in terms of human need. And then we did site visits that identified for us whether there was leadership capacity. Could they get the right people in the room? Were they willing to do this? We were going to have to go through a contract, kind of all of those things. And from that work, we narrowed it down to the 5 states that we're working in 2018 into 2019. And from those site visits, we had a sort of secondary list. And from that list, we will choose the couple other places that will work in 2019. So I would say, actually, if you're if you're really fired up about, and many of you were involved in that, I want to say, whenever we went to a state where there was a brigade that was doing any work in this area or had strong relationships with their mostly state government, it's mostly, these are administered from the federal and state level, not locally. We got a lot of great support from the brigades that way, and many people were involved. In fact, actually, in some of the states that we're working in, we actually have brigades who are doing some of the user research. I helped connect us to some local user research firms as well. So that's been really fantastic. So what I would say is we're not, I guess fortunately, we're not in a situation of needing to convince a lot of new states to work with us. We actually have more interest than we can service, which is a really nice position to be in. But if you have a particular insight into like why your state, if you're fired up for your state, and you have a particular interest into sort of like, why, we would love to hear that as another point of reference. For us, political willingness, leadership capacity is really big in terms of our ability to be successful in these really short time frames. So kind of knocking on a state door and saying like, please work with us isn't going to be as successful as going to a state that's sort of saying like, help us. So if you have insight into that, I would say just pass that on to us. And best way to do that would be, if you know how to reach me directly, that's wonderful. But you can do it through any of the network staff, and just tell us who you are and what state why you're fired up about them engaging in this work. And then we're happy to have a follow-up conversation about that.
Great, thank you so much. I'll get to one last question. And I know, Meredith, you might have some of this from a brigade lens, and ST, please feel free to jump in from a CFA lens. Has CFA thought about regrowth for underrepresented groups, picking up some of the energy from the Girl Develop It debacle?
Yes, we've thought about it, but have we started to implement on strategies to sort of absorb some of that energy? I think the answer would be no. I think important though that we pause a minute and absorb and learn from some of their challenges, because I think we've got a similar network, and I think we should ensure that we are sort of doing justice to our network in a way that helps us avoid some of the challenges I think that network faced. So all that to say, an opportunity for us to like take a hard look at what we're doing well, and what we could improve on, what you all need from us and vice versa, to ensure that we can be sort of a healthy and sustainable network and movement. But I will say that we should absolutely make it as easy as possible for folks who want to get plugged into Code for America and in our brigades, the ability to do so. So I would absolutely welcome some ideas that folks have there. Also on my list to do some relationship building kind of at the organizational level there, so we can figure out what some of the best pathways are. So would welcome any recommendations folks have, both on like tactical ability to absorb some of the volunteers and energy for folks who want to stay involved, as well as other like institutional insight folks might have that would be useful as we're thinking about how to make our network as strong as possible.
Great, thank you. ST, did you have anything to add?
No, I think Meredith said it well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you both so much for your presentations. They were extremely insightful, and it looks like from the feedback, everybody got some good information that's useful. So if you have any further questions, please feel free to put them in the doc, and I assume that we can just provide answers in the doc as well to some of the questions that we didn't get to. So without further ado, I would like to now turn over our last half hour to Nina and to Mike, who will be presenting about their work for their own brigade's strategic plans and 2019 planning. So I will turn it over to Mike first, who will be presenting about Code for Buffalo.
Great, thanks Veronica. Thanks Meredith and ST. I will start my screen share now. Okay, is it, let's see, loading? Is that showing up for everyone?
Yes, we have it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so, hi everyone. Again, my name's Mike Brown. There's my contact info if you want to get in touch afterwards. So a short background on Code for Buffalo. So we are just 7 months old. We have 5 people in our core team, pretty good mix of backgrounds. About like half of us have at least some like tech experience, but we have planners, 2 people in nonprofits, 2 CS students, including myself, and a UX designer. In the last year, in the past 7 months, we hosted 11 meetups and a National Day of Civic Hacking event. We have strong connections established with community partners, especially just from the personal connections from the core team and some of the other consistent members that we have. And for our strategic plan, we really tried to align ourselves with community identified priorities, which I'll talk about in a bit. So a little bit about the process that we used. We started with the strategic plan template that is in the Brigade Organizers Playbook, which was super useful for us. It has questions for you to answer that pretty much guides you through the entire process. So there's a link to it there, but it's also in the playbook. And then we had about 4 different like phases for our process. So right after Brigade Congress, we had a debrief meetup, and then during that we also had a discussion about the vision, mission, values, and operating principles that we wanted to incorporate specifically for Code for Buffalo. We'll talk about that in a bit. Then we had after that, we had a core team meeting, although we did open it up to anyone that was interested in attending. And that was more so on the like operating plan side of things. So the logistics, like events that we're going to do, team expectations, determining a budget. And after that, we sent out that draft plan to our members for any of their additions or feedback, basically like a public comment period. And then at the next meetup, we had our holiday party, as well as talked through that draft plan, making live edits and revisions afterwards. So there is a link to our Google Doc. Technically, it is still in draft because I think we found the most useful part was the planning itself rather than just like the document at the end. So we haven't finalized it yet. But some of the things we changed like a few things for vision, mission, values, and operating principles, just based on what we felt was best for our local context. And so give a shout out to Open Savannah for some of their good operating principles. And then also especially Code for Philly for a good list of team expectations. I forget where exactly the link is for that, but I can find it afterwards. So we identified some of our team needs, identified a difference between like brigade members versus brigade volunteers who work on projects to make it as accessible as possible. Did budget estimates and guidelines for the projects. We had a calendar thrown in there. I'll skip over it just because we're short on time. A breakdown of what activities we regularly do throughout the year. So we have our civic innovation nights, which are like guest speakers about every month, and then kind of project-based hack nights and coding coffees, and then special events, of course. So when talking about aligning our projects, we wanted to focus on making sure that our initiatives aligned with the initiatives of our community partners. So one of them, and this is definitely kind of driven by the fact that the other co-founder for our brigade, she's an urban planner. So we thought that the One Region Forward plan, which is a regional urban planning roadmap for a bunch of different issues such as land use, mobility, food access, et cetera, that would be a really good way to kind of put like guardrails along the side of our of like where our brigade is heading. So we make sure that we are working on the priorities that have already been identified for the region, which is good because they had a very comprehensive public engagement process. And then one of our other really key partners is a local think tank called Partnership for the Public Good. They do a community agenda where they have over 200 partners pitch policy ideas and vote on the top 10 to become the focus of the work. So for our projects that we want to accomplish in 2019, first off, kind of on the event planning and initiative side of things, we want to partner with the Mayor's Civic Innovation Challenge and host events in collaboration with Open Data Day and National Day of Civic Hacking. When it comes to that One Region Forward plan, there was actually a part in there that explicitly said that they want to provide data and analytical resources for informed decision making. So we're still working out the full project details for that, but want to be tracking where economic development is happening and also where housing vacancies are occurring. One of the things with Buffalo Water Board that we'll be doing is automating a process of determining eligibility for this new affordable water program that they have. So very interested in, as ST mentioned, the blueprint for guidelines on enrollment best practices and such. So very interested in that. And then thirdly, with our partnership with Partnership for the Public Good and some of the other organizations in Buffalo, one of them being Open Buffalo, which is why we couldn't use that name. We are creating a Court Watch Buffalo website, very similar to Court Watch NYC or the documenters.org that was mentioned in the Slack. And so that is to assist with their existing efforts around bail reform. And so very excited to be working on that, and certainly happy to talk more about that. So key takeaways from our planning. I think that it is good having this living document, especially since everything is all in one place. So, you know, if you're working on a sponsorship package, it's good to be able to refer back to that. And then some of the clear outcomes definitely brought stronger brigade cohesion, especially just discussing the mission and values and such, and overall giving us a stronger sense of where we want to go, what we want to do, and what challenges remain. And that's it.
That was awesome. Thank you, Mike. I will open it up for questions for Mike, and we can just do these with people chiming in and unmuting themselves.
I got a question if no one else is going.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sweet. How did you, the projects that you guys chose, that Code for Buffalo chose, was that dictated sort of by the partnerships that you guys had forged with those agencies or those organizations? Did you have like a host of options, sort of projects to choose from, or that you were mulling over and then picked a few certain of them, or are these the ones that sort of popped up and as they come along you sort of add them to the list? I'm not sure. Just having kind of started or trying to start one, working on that actually right after this. What did those first few months look like of projects and determining what the priorities were?
Yeah, so definitely the first few months for us, a lot of it was figuring out how we can build our capacity. So building out that initial core team took a bit to recruit people to fill all the different roles for the team. And especially the projects were very much driven by figuring out who we want to partner with. That being very much based on just like who we have, just like as individuals, who we have connections with, and then leveraging those. And I think especially as a new brigade, that helps a lot because it shows that, okay, we're working in the community and with these existing organizations, which ultimately definitely reduces the kind of load for us because they know what objectives they want to achieve, and we can kind of drive the conversation by showing what's possible with this field of civic tech, and then driving the conversation from there to see what projects we want to do.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, hope it helps.
Okay. Oh, nice. Thanks, John. Yeah, this is great. Thank you, Mike, for your presentation. And as John pointed out, it's really great to see your work as a newer brigade to the network and how you're organizing your priorities for the year. So that's awesome. I will screen share for Nina, who's up next. And so, Nina, are you ready to talk through the slides?
Yes, let me know if my sound is okay.
Your sound is good. If you just let me know when to go to the next slide, that would be great.
All right, will do. Go for it.
Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Perfect.
Cool. So I am Nina, and I am one of the 2 co-captains of Hack for LA. In January, actually just last weekend, we had our first meeting of the year, which we utilized to do kind of like a planning meeting, recap and planning meeting for the year. So next slide. Just as a little bit of background about our specific brigade, we host 2 weekly hack nights. Our core team is currently made up of 8 members, which is 2 captains, 2 hosts at each of the hack nights, and then 2 additional members. Our core team is spread out across 50 miles. And so as a result, it's really difficult to get everyone together in one place for even a video, for an in-person meeting for sure, but even like a video call, because everyone is so busy with like kids and jobs and their lives. So we were really lucky to be able to actually get all 8 of us in person together at a coffee shop last weekend for this meeting. So next up, I'll talk about the approach that we took in setting our agenda for this meeting. Our time is limited, so we wanted to make sure it's well spent, and so we try to keep it really simple. We wanted to make sure that everyone gets something valuable out of being part of Hack Fairly leadership. And so one thing we wanted to focus on was, kind of identifying and making sure that we're in alignment with everyone's individual personal goals. We also want our goals as an organization to be driven by the needs identified by the leadership team. And that way we get, make sure we have buy-in by the team for the overall direction of our group. So with that, the next slide shows the basic structure of the meeting agenda we set. So 3 main sections, which is review of 2018, going forward in 2019, and then just normal meeting items. So like we normally have a monthly meeting, and so we saved a little bit of time at the end for that. So as part of reviewing 2018, we wanted to talk about accomplishments and what did we actually do in 2018. And then talk about, well, what can we do better as an organization? And then bring up our financial status. For 2019, we wanted to, again, address some of those leadership things, such as, the number one thing that you as a core team member want from working with Hack Fairly, and then the number one thing you want to see happen for Hack Fairly as an organization. And then, improvements, what can we do better as a core team? So go into them, starting with the next slide, what went well in 2018. So this screenshot right here is actually of the GitHub org where the GitHub repo where our notes are. We put all of our meeting notes up there, and there will be a link at the end of the slides. So you'll be able to see all of these notes on GitHub. So we listed out all of the things that we could think of, like events that we were part of, even if it was just having a table there, events that we hosted, a lot of different things, different Hack Night and project milestones, and things around the Brigade network. So like going to Summit, going to Brigade Congress, stuff like that. And then next slide is things that we identified we wanted to improve on in 2019. And it came down to 2 major things. Encouraging more volunteers to step up so that we could increase our leadership capacity, and then also defining standards for project governance, because we realized that we're at a point in our project groups at our Hack Nights where, really serious questions about like proper project governance were coming up. So next slide, our finances in 2018. This was important for us because we actually switched from CFA being our nonprofit sponsor to using a local nonprofit sponsor. And we started actively trying to raise funds. So this is through connections that we had made and built up throughout the year. A couple of foundations are interested in giving us money, government discretionary funds, and then also fundraising from Giving Tuesday. So next up, in terms of 2019 personal goals from the team, it was a big variety across the board. Some of them were broad and long-term type goals. Some of them were more specific. So I won't get into the details, but they're here. You can see them up on our repo as well. And then next up, organizational goals. So these, sorry, next slide. Yeah, oh, there we go, okay. So organizational goals, again, these were pretty diverse, which is really cool to see, but they kind of fell into goals related to the fact that we're maturing as an organization. Instead of just being like a tech meetup, on meetup.com, we're thinking of ourselves more of as like a nonprofit and, having funding and having responsibility. And then, of course, the other main theme was growing. We wanted to, we really see the potential in what we're able to accomplish just in what we did in 2018 alone. So we want to build on that and grow and expand. And we realize in order to do that, we also need to grow our capacity. So that was that. And then last item was core team improvements. So what did we recognize that we needed to improve on as a core team? Oh.
Sorry, it's lagging.
No worries.
There we go.
Okay, cool. So one thing was having tighter monthly meetings. So normally we have monthly video calls. And one thing that was brought up was that people wanted to focus on what needs to be done instead of reviewing what happened the previous month. And we wanted better follow-up with specific action items that had been identified. The second major thing was establishing committees. So one thing that we noticed was that, because it's so hard to get everyone to meet together at one time, things got dropped because we couldn't have the whole team or we couldn't have everyone respond. So we want to break it down into smaller groups by forming subcommittees that would be more nimble, be able to meet more often. So we identified 3 major areas based on the points that were brought up from earlier in the meeting. So the first is events, and we want to have more lead time, do our planning on a quarterly basis, and come up with a better calendar of events. Second was for project governance. We want to establish standard models and project guidelines, especially since, we want our projects to move beyond just like a initial startup launch phase and actually be mature and be sustainable and get funding. Organizational government. So this is around stuff like establishing mission, values, and a governance model. This is something that we recognize is really important, but we get so caught up in the day-to-day of running our weekly hack nights that we haven't really had much time to focus on this. So that's something where we figured, if we set like a smaller group, a committee to focus on this stuff, that can be brought back to the larger group. And then finally, another thing that was identified, which we don't really have the capacity for right now, but having like a marketing and outreach committee we thought would be really important in order to promote events and do storytelling, because a lot of that stuff gets lost when we're so busy in the operations and actually running an event. And then also, of course, there's a lot of untapped opportunity for collaborations and cross promotions with other communities within tech and nonprofit, but we just don't really have the capacity for that with everything else that we're taking on right now. So that's it in a nutshell. The last slide is the link to our GitHub repo. So you can see all of the details that I just kind of summarized in this presentation. Any questions?
Nick in Vermont here. I've got a question.
Yes.
Why did you switch from CFA as your sponsor to a local nonprofit?
So this specifically came out of one of our more mature project groups that was actually done in conjunction with the LA County Arts Commission. And we were ready to put it into production and pay for a production site to be hosted. But we ran into an issue where they were able to theoretically provide money, but some of these grants or funds need to go to a local nonprofit. And even though we are locally based, by our nonprofit being non-local, because CFA is based out of San Francisco, we can't tap into some of those funds. So that's pretty much the primary reason why we switched to having a local fiscal sponsor.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Nina?
I just want to say, while folks might be thinking about things to ask that Nina and Mike really appreciate your leadership and your thoughtfulness in putting together your strategic planning for your brigades and being willing to share this with the rest of the group. It's pretty sophisticated and we're grateful for it. So thank you for sharing.
Awesome. Well, does anybody have any final questions just in general for any of the presenters? I guess you can put it in the chat if you have one, so people aren't talking over each other. Well, with all that, we ended 5 minutes early. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Next step? What's the next step after this workshop? What's the next thing that the network is going to do with all of this?
Well, I think that there are a few steps. First of all, everyone's slides will be in the agenda, so you can have those as a resource for you and your brigades. I think we're going to go through and make sure all of the questions that were in the doc are answered. And then, of course, we are finalizing right now those OKRs that Meredith showed. And so definitely as we do these OKRs and future OKRs, incorporating everyone's feedback into the direction of the work that we're doing on a daily basis.
Good question.
Awesome. Okay, well, I guess we'll end 4 minutes early, but this was really wonderful. I want to thank everybody again for spending your evening with us. I want to thank ST, Meredith, Mike, Nina for presenting, and I think this was a really good conversation. So if you have any ideas for future workshops, we've pretty much planned out the next few months of workshops that you can see on the Brigade website under the events section. So you can look forward to those, or if for some reason they don't seem useful at all, let us know, just so we can make sure that we are planning workshops that are informative and useful. And Tom, thanks for putting this in. There's a design working group happening right now after this meeting, which will be hosted by Nick from Open Maine. And so that event is on the Brigade website as well. So if you want to tune in to register for that, there is more discussion happening, particularly around design. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Veronica.
Thanks.
Thanks, all.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.